Okay, so today we're doing something a little different. We're not wading through, complex theories or dense reports.
No, not this time.
Instead, we're actually unearthing a story, a true story, but one that feels so unsettling. It's almost like it's pulled straight from a Gothic novel.
It really does have that quality, doesn't it? Deeply disturbing.
We've got this transcript essentially detailing the life of Blanche Monnier, or maybe the imprisonment of Blanche Monnier is more accurate.
Yeah.
And our goal here is really just to piece together the details, understand this, almost unbelievable account. It's a shortcut, if you like, to one of history's really tragic tales.
And what's really striking, I think, isn't just the sheer horror of it all, but the questions it forces you to ask, about family, about control.
Absolutely. And societal blindness, maybe.
That too. How things like this can even happen. That's what we're digging into.
All right, let's get into it then. We start in late 19th century France. Meet Blanche Monnier. She's young, maybe mid-20s.
Vibrant, by all accounts.
Exactly. Her father had passed away recently, so it's her mother, Mrs. Louise Monnier, and her brother, Marcel.
And the Monniers weren't just anybody.
No, definitely not. They were, incredibly wealthy. Hugely influential family. And Blanche herself seemed set for this amazing future. Beautiful, lively, lots of suitors.
But you need to understand the context of that time, right? For a family like the Monnier, their standing, their wealth, it dictated everything.
Especially marriage.
Especially marriage. A so-called poor match, someone without the right name or money, wasn't just frowned upon, it was seen as a serious social mistake. It could damage the family's reputation.
And that context is absolutely key here, because Blanche, despite all these potential suitors, she falls deeply in love.
But not with someone suitable in her mother's eyes.
Not at all. He was a lawyer, but crucially, he wasn't well established, didn't come from their sort of elite circle, and certainly didn't have their kind of money.
Which, for Mrs. Monnier, was unthinkable.
Completely. She was furiously against it. Reports say their house was just filled with arguments, constant fighting over this.
But Blanche wasn't backing down.
No, she was determined. She told her friend she was going to marry him. The whole town was apparently expecting wedding news.
You can almost picture the anticipation.
You can, but the wedding never happened. Instead, there was just silence.
Suddenly, she's gone.
Blanche Monnier just disappeared from public view, vanished. And at first, people didn't suspect anything too bizarre. Life just carried on.
Until enough time passed.
Right. When she didn't reappear after a while, the whispers started. And that's when Mrs. Monnier came out with this story. Seemingly heartbroken, she claimed Blanche had, gone insane.
The convenient explanation.
Exactly. She presented herself as this caring mother, choosing to look after Blanche at home, protect her, rather than, quote, cruelly admitting her to an asylum. She insisted Blanche's every need was attended to.
And people believe this.
Largely, yes, which is maybe the most disturbing part. But you'll have to remember the Monniers' power.
Their influence, yeah.
Huge influence. Wealth, connections in the church and local government. Marcel, the brother, even held public office.
So their word carried a lot of weight. People trusted them, or maybe feared contradicting them?
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
Their respectable image allowed them to control the narrative, basically, to hide the truth.
It really makes you wonder how much that status shielded them for so long.
And this is where it gets truly, deeply horrifying. Fast forward about 8 years after Blanche disappeared.
8 years.
8 years. Late one evening, a neighbor is walking past the Monnier estate. Big, grand house. And they hear something. Screams. Coming from a tiny, almost hidden window, a woman's voice, crying out, saying she was being held against her will, that she didn't even know why.
My God. It's chilling.
So the next morning, this neighbor, and you have to admire their courage, confronts Mrs. Monnier.
What does she say?
Predictably, she dismisses it. Says Blanche's insanity had just gotten worse, that she was having delusions. And Marcel, the brother, he backs her up.
Of course he does.
And then, the truly cold part. Right after that confrontation, that little window, it was boarded up, completely sealed.
So no more light, no more chance for anyone to hear her.
Exactly. Total isolation. A couple of years after that, the lawyer, the man she loved, he died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And with him gone, any lingering public memory or concern about Blanche just faded away. People forgot.
But she was still in there.
She was still in there, now living in absolute darkness. And she would stay like that, in the dark, for another 17 years.
17 more years. It's almost impossible to fathom. The escalation is terrifying. From a lie to actively silencing cries for help.
It shows just how committed they were to this secret, how much control they exerted.
Total control, and the effectiveness of their social standing in making it all stick.
Until 1901, 25 years after she first vanished, the truth finally comes out.
How? What finally broke the silence?
An anonymous tip. Apparently, during the early years, Blanche was looked after by this long-serving family maid, but she eventually retired. And she was replaced by 2 younger women. And both of these new maids were understandably horrified by what they found, by the Monnier secret.
I can only imagine.
One of them just couldn't live with it. She decided to write to the police, anonymously.
What did the letter say?
It was brief, but absolutely devastating. It read, "Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who was locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living in putrid litter for the past 25 years. In a word, in her own filth."
Wow, just stark, in her own filth.
You can't ignore something like that. The police acted fast. They went straight to the Monnier house.
Was there resistance?
Oh yeah. Mrs. Monnier and Marcel tried to block them, deny everything, but the police insisted, pushed their way through, and were eventually led to this locked room upstairs.
And inside?
Inside was. Well, the reports from veteran officers say it was almost indescribable. The woman they found bore almost no resemblance to the beautiful heiress the town remembered. She was in her 50s now, emaciated.
Just a shell.
Pretty much. One officer's testimony, it's graphic, but it captures the horror. The unfortunate woman was lying completely naked in a rotten straw mattress.
Naked.
All around her was formed a sort of crust made of excrement, fragments of meat, vegetables, fish, and rotten bread. We also saw oyster shells and bugs are running across Blanche's bed.
Oh, God.
The air was so unbreathable. The odor given off by the room was so rank that it was impossible for us to stay any longer to proceed with our investigation.
That is profound neglect doesn't even begin to cover it. It's dehumanization.
Complete dehumanization. This woman, who was once young and vibrant, she weighed only about 55 pounds when they found her.
55 pounds.
And the confinement, the darkness, the isolation, it had destroyed more than her body. She'd lost most of her ability to speak. Police, the caretakers later, they described her as being almost childlike, terrified.
Physically free, finally, but trapped mentally. The psychological damage, unimaginable.
Truly. So the discovery itself is horrific, that image. But what happened next? What about Blanche? And what about her captors?
Right, the aftermath.
Well, Mrs. Monnier and Marcel were arrested immediately. Right there at the scene, Blanche was taken straight to the hospital.
And that's when the famous photograph was taken.
Yes, that incredibly shocking photo showing her condition. It went public, and the world was just stunned. Amazingly, physically, Blanche did start to recover. She gained weight, got stronger.
And the mental scars?
Too deep. 25 years.
Yeah.
It was just too much. She spent the rest of her life in psychiatric care, in an asylum, and died there over a decade later. Never fully recovered mentally.
Tragic. And her mother? Mrs. Monnier.
Justice, if you can call it that, was swift, but not through the courts. She was in her mid-70s, had a heart condition.
Yeah.
And she died in custody just 15 days after being arrested.
15 days. So she never faced trial, never answered for it?
Never. Which left Marcel, the brother.
He went to trial, right?
He did. And his defense was, well, breathtakingly audacious. He tried to blame everything on his mother, now conveniently deceased.
Pointing the finger.
Entirely. And legally, unbelievably, it kind of worked.
How? How could it possibly work?
His argument was essentially that he hadn't physically detained her. He claimed that technically she could have left anytime she wanted, but chose not to.
Chose not to. Despite being locked in, starved, in filth, that's insane.
It's utterly perverse, especially when the police found the door locked, the window sealed shut.
And didn't they find writings on the wall?
Yes. They found writing on the walls, things she'd scrawled, praying for freedom, clear evidence she was held against her will.
But he was still acquitted.
Acquitted. A trial late in 1901 found him not guilty. He walked free, went back to his life, his family, his inheritance.
An inheritance that should have been partly hers.
Exactly. Which you can be pretty sure was never shared with the sister he helped in prison for 25 years. The lack of justice is just staggering.
It really is. It leaves you asking why. Why did they do it? Why did it continue for so long?
That's still debated, isn't it?
It is. The initial reason seems clear enough, the mother's absolute horror at the thought of Blanche marrying this unsuitable lawyer.
Okay, but why keep her locked up after he died? That was years later.
That's the murkier part. Some theories point towards, like, a religious panic. Mrs. Monnier was described as deeply devout. Maybe she saw the relationship, even the memory of it, as some unforgivable sin tied up with social shame.
Possibly. And Marcel, what was his angle?
The most common belief is straightforward greed. By keeping Blanche locked away, incapacitated, he ensured he would be the sole heir to the family's considerable fortune, cutting her out completely.
Just pure self-interest.
It seems likely. Whatever their twisted mix of motives, control, shame, religion, greed, none of it justifies what they did. And Marcel's excuses at the trial were just bogus, appalling.
Yeah. Even now, 120 years later?
Yeah.
The story still has the power to shock.
Absolutely. And the fact that Marcel essentially got away with it.
So this deep dive into Blanche Monnier's life, it's harrowing. There's no other word for it. It's not just some weird historical footnote.
No, it's a brutal reminder, isn't it?
A vulnerability, definitely. And the capacity for cruelty. Even within families, it really makes you think about those hidden shadows, the ones that can exist behind respectable fronts.
And how easily truth can be buried by power and influence.
Yeah. But also, maybe, about the human spirit. Even in that darkness, those scribbles on the wall that cry for freedom.
What really stays with me is how this case still resonates. It's a chilling lesson that sometimes the worst horrors aren't happening far away, they're happening right there.
Hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. Behind closed doors.
Well, thank you for joining us on this difficult deep dive. It's a story that certainly sticks with you.
It does indeed.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging beneath the surface.